A killer waits to strike. When Neil Olen goes to feed his beloved horse Hannah, he walks straight into an ambush. Neil dies at the scene. The killer is the victim's 20-year-old stepson, Chris. He confesses to the murder, but says it's not his fault. His mother told him to do it. Patricia Olen is charged with murder and convicted, but she has pled innocent from day one. Is she a manipulative, controlling mother who asked her own son to kill his stepfather? Or is she an innocent woman wrongly convicted of her husband's murder? From behind these walls, Patricia Olen will tell me her story. I'm Candice DeLong. As an FBI agent, I worked on the front line for the world's most powerful law enforcement agency. I went undercover, I trailed terrorists, and I interviewed notorious killers. It's my job to understand the people who others cannot comprehend. January 2005, Lanesboro, Massachusetts. Patricia Olen discovers her husband's dead body in the barn and calls 911. At first, police on the scene think Neil has been trampled by his horse, Hannah. Then they discover a bloody metal pipe and empty shotgun casings near the body and realize this is a murder. So who would want Neil dead? He's kicked his stepson Chris out of the house, and they have had a difficult relationship. Could it have been revenge? His wife Patricia was having financial problems that she was hiding from Neil. She too has a motive. While son Chris was sentenced for pulling the trigger, ultimately it was Patricia who was convicted of first-degree murder. She will live out her days here in the Massachusetts Correctional Institution, Framingham. Now, Patricia Olen has the opportunity to tell me her version of events. How does a young, attractive woman who says she is deeply in love with her husband...
Hi, Candice.
Hi, nice to meet you, Pat.
...end up being charged with murdering him?
So, Patricia, I read everything I could find about you. And there's a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I still really don't understand. How did you end up that this is your life, that your life is in prison? What happened?
I had just been recently diagnosed with Crohn's disease, and Jim, my first husband, had a difficult time dealing with someone that was sick.
Crohn's disease is an inflammation of the intestines. I've come across this crippling disease in the past. It causes nausea and vomiting and makes life very difficult.
Our marriage was deteriorating, and we had sat down and talked about it, and we thought it would be best if the kids stayed with him.
And what was that like for you?
It was hard, but the thing that I was worried about was if anything were to happen to me, if I ended up in the hospital for a week or two, that would be difficult for them.
I'm a mother too, and I can't imagine it would have been easy for Patricia to leave her kids like that.
I just thought it would be better and more stable for them to be with their dad.
Okay.
3 years after divorcing her first husband, Patricia meets sign printer Neil.
One day, he said that he needed to talk to me. So I went to his house the next night, and he said he wanted to spend the rest of his life with me.
Wow.
Neil soon accepts Patricia in sickness and in health.
How long was it before you got married?
We waited 1 year.
Okay.
And we never went on a first date.
You never did?
No, and we never went on a honeymoon. because Neil's theory on the honeymoon was as long as we didn't go on the honeymoon, we'd always be newlyweds.
One of the first things I notice about Patricia is that she still wears her wedding band. If she is responsible for the murder of her husband, why would she still be wearing it? Coming up, marital bliss is soon interrupted by two new arrivals.
So they came to live with you and Neil?
Yes.
And it's not one big happy family.
Neil had some pretty bizarre punishments.
Newlyweds Neil and Patricia Olsen are just getting used to married life when Patricia throws a wrench in the works. She's been separated from her son Chris and her daughter Amanda for 3 years, and now she wants them back.
So now you've remarried.
Yes.
And you wanted your kids back.
Yeah, I did. And Neil knew that. And he knew that was something I wanted. My goal was to get custody of the kids. We finally got custody, which Neil paid for their attorney, he paid for my attorney, and it was a battle.
It was a battle.
Yeah.
Your ex didn't want to let the kids go.
No.
Neil soon adjusts to life as a stepfather. He continues to run his successful printing business from home, and Patricia opens up a small seafood diner close by. Chris and Amanda had few rules, and before long, life becomes difficult.
How old were the kids when you started noticing there were problems?
Amanda, I'm going to say about 9th or 10th grade.
Well, a lot of teenage girls around that age can be difficult.
Right.
Patricia says Neil was old-fashioned when it came to discipline. It was his house, and the kids had to live by his rules.
Neil had some pretty bizarre punishments. He would end up having these chores like regrading the driveway. We had a long winding driveway, so they would be out there like filling in the potholes and raking it out, cleaning the horse stall, cleaning like the garage.
Hard work? Yes, but hardly child abuse. But next, Patricia tells me a strange story about Amanda getting punished.
Amanda came home one day from school and she was talking to a friend of hers on the phone. And I could hear Amanda's end, and she was picking on the girl not having good clothes, calling her trailer park trash, things like that. I don't
A
want her to
bully.
think
It
that
sounded
yeah.
like she was bullying someone.
So Neil came up with this great idea Monday morning. We went to a farm goods store, and he bought 5 pair of coveralls, 5 striped shirts, and a pair of big brown work boots. So she came home that day, and I said, Amanda, I went shopping today. And she said, you did, Mommy, what'd you get me? And I said, oh, a whole new wardrobe. And she thought I was joking, and I said, no, Amanda. I said, I want you to know what it's like to be this girl, and you're gonna wear that to school this week.
I'm not sure if humiliation is a good parenting technique. Even if they thought it was to teach Amanda a lesson, it is a bit harsh. But Patricia doesn't seem to have a problem with it.
No.
I can imagine it being a pretty tense household after that.
It was, but it wasn't like a screaming match.
How did Neil and Christopher get along back then?
As they got older and Chris started slacking in school, that's when a little bit of the tension, started, because he would lie.
Relations were strained between Neil and both children. Tensions reach breaking point when Chris gets his young girlfriend pregnant. Neil takes decisive action. He kicks Chris out of the house and tells him never to come back. When we return, is Chris angry enough at his stepfather to want to kill him? And what motive might Patricia have to want Neil dead?
That doesn't look good.
At the time, he did not know about it, and I was scared to death.
The Olsen family is about to crack under pressure. Chris has been kicked out by his stepdad, Neil, and Patricia is having problems of her own. Neil hands over responsibility of all their business and household finances to Patricia because she had an accounting background.
Some unfortunate things started happening. Some problems with bills.
I wouldn't really call it problems, and I think that the whole money thing has gotten kind of blown out of proportion. Between running both businesses, between the restaurant and the sign business, there was no time for much at all.
Patricia's seafood diner needs bailing out, and she's using the family funds to keep it afloat. Bills are not being paid, and the debts are mounting. But according to court documents, Neil was not aware of this.
I was neglectful in the fact that I would just take the mail, kind of like go through, get the checks from the sign business, pull those out, and then just take the rest of it and just throw in a pile.
This type of behavior shows me that Patricia avoids facing problems head-on. Soon she has no choice but to face up to the truth when the bank threatens to take their home.
What had happened is my mother-in-law actually called me up, and she said there's an announcement in the paper for foreclosure on the house, and I was devastated. I'm like, you're kidding me.
What happens next is very odd. To save the house, she asks Neil's brother for 2 favors. The first is to borrow $45,000. The second is to keep the loan hidden from Neil.
I called him up and I said, I don't know what to do. And what my idea was is to have like this plan, and then be able to come to Neil and say, look, I screwed up and I should have paid the payment and I didn't, but.
Okay, so going to the brother-in-law to borrow the money was to get everything worked out, and then you were going to tell Neil. You planned to tell him, but for the moment, it was a secret. That doesn't look good.
I know.
Do you see how that hurt you?
I know. I do understand that. So I've been honest about this and saying that no, at the time he did not know about it. And I was scared to death.
Patricia thought she could sort out the money problems on her own. But Neil soon found out when police stopped him on Friday, January 7th, 2005. His car was uninsured.
When Neil came home that Friday and they said that there wasn't any insurance or registration on the truck, I was going to take care of it on Monday.
By Monday, Neil was dead. Was it because he just found out they were in deep financial trouble? Or was it simply an angry young man getting revenge on a stepfather he hated? At 11:30 p.m. on Sunday, January 9th, Chris hides in the barn and waits for Neil. He shoots Neil 9 times. 7 bullets hit him in the face. He then picks up an iron bar and batters him. Patricia says she knew nothing about this and didn't even hear the gunshots because she had taken 3 sleeping pills.
When I woke up Monday morning, Neil wasn't in bed.
Assuming he's working in the barn, Patricia says the next morning she went out to take him his breakfast.
So then what happened?
And then I went out to the sign shop.
And what did you find?
You can see where the horses stall through the sign shop, and the door was open, and I looked, and there was Neil's boot, his leg. And then I went in.
Must have been horrible.
Neil's face is unrecognizable.
What did you think had happened?
I don't know. I thought maybe he fell at first when I saw him laying there. I don't remember. I went in there, and then I remember seeing his boot, his hand, and then the light bulb in Hannah's eyes.
Patricia leaves the barn, goes back into the house, and calls 911.
Emergency. What's the problem? He's unresponsive?
Do you recall what you thought at the time?
No, I just didn't want it to be true.
Okay.
After the police arrive on the scene, they have a surprising suspect.
The police came in and they told me that they thought that Hannah had kicked Neil in the face.
Hannah had trampled Neil to death.
Yeah.
In all my years with the FBI, that was the first time I'd heard of a horse getting the blame. When we return, searching for the real story.
Patricia, are you responsible for your husband's murder?
On Monday, January 10th, 2005, Patricia Olson discovers her husband's lifeless body in the barn. The first police on the scene think Neil has been trampled to death by his own horse. An autopsy reveals that he has been shot in the head and beaten with an iron bar. The next day, Patricia's son Chris is arrested and charged with Neil's murder after he blabs to a friend.
The police tell you that your son Christopher murdered your husband, his stepfather, since he was 9, 10 years old. How soon after that did you talk with Christopher?
I haven't.
You have never talked to Christopher since?
No.
That's right. Mother and son have never spoken since the murder. Yet, Patricia would soon be charged with putting him up to the whole thing.
How soon after Neil's murder did the police tell you you're under arrest?
February 3rd.
So about a month. And their belief was that you had asked Christopher to kill Neil.
Yes.
Patricia, are you responsible for your husband's murder?
No, I'm not. I'm not. I had no part of it, and I don't think it's right that I sit here for something that I didn't do.
But the jury believed the prosecution, that Patricia's motive was to use Neil's life insurance to pay off the family debts and start afresh. In May 2006, Patricia Olson was found guilty of first-degree murder and sentenced to life without parole.
Do you recall what you felt when the verdict came in, that you were guilty of premeditated murder?
I think it was more of a shock, more of a disbelief. Like, this can't be happening. It just can't.
Her son Chris, who admitted pulling the trigger and killing Neil, was convicted of second-degree murder on June 7th, 2006. He will be eligible for parole in 10 years. Patricia thinks Chris lied about her involvement simply to lessen his own sentence.
I think that Christopher lives in this world that, you know, he believes that he's best friends with the lead singer of Linkin Park. He believes that we're from Ireland. He tells people that we have a Lear jet that we fly in every summer and pick people up and fly them back.
Well, this is all fantastical stuff.
There are certainly lies being told in this story, but who is telling them? Throughout my entire conversation with Patricia, I saw nothing that indicated what is known as consciousness of guilt. Her story and body language suggest to me that she may be telling the truth.
Did you kill Neil?
No.
Did you ask anyone to kill Neil?
No.
Did you ask either of your children to kill Neil?
No.
A lot of prisoners tell me they are innocent. But here's an interesting twist to the story. Prior to sentencing, Patricia was offered a deal to enter a guilty plea.
They had offered me 10 years when my trial was going on, and I said absolutely not. And I'd served 15 months in county jail waiting my trial, and the only thing that kept me from killing myself was wanting to prove my innocence.
Patricia has her own theory about why Chris killed Neil.
Why do you think Christopher did this? He didn't benefit financially from Neil's death, did he?
I think Chris's intentions were if he got rid of Neil, he would be able to move back into the house.
So you think Christopher, if I understand you, you think your son killed his stepfather, your husband, for the purpose of getting back into the house. And Neil had kicked Christopher out.
Yes.
So you think Christopher did this because he was angry at Neil and wanted him out of the picture?
Yes, I do.
Do you think you'd ever see your son Christopher again if you
Yeah, I
had
do.
the option?
I would.
Okay.
I would, because people go, how can you, how can you feel sorry for your son after what he did to you? But I just feel like I did something wrong. I feel like, as a mother, I should have maybe been there a little more for him. I should have seen things. I should have. It's hard because I think about if I didn't marry Neil, he would still be alive. If I didn't fight for custody of my kids, he would still be alive.
Life did not turn out the way you wanted.
No.
Did the jury get it right in Patricia Olsen's case? There's a small part of me that thinks maybe they were wrong. Patricia has lost everything she held dear in her life. Her husband was brutally murdered by her own son.
I'm sorry.
Was the murder all her idea? And is she in the place she deserves to be? Or is her imprisonment a grave miscarriage of justice? We may never know.